The rain came down like it had something to prove. Nina Michelle stood outside New York General Hospital at 11:47 at night, wearing a coat that was still damp from her walk, holding a small white plastic stick in both hands like it was made of glass. She stared at it. 2 lines. She had counted them 4 times already. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She already knew who it was before she looked. Caller ID lit up with 3 words she had trained herself to feel nothing about. Kim Tae-chan. She pressed the red button, declined, slid the phone back into her pocket, and stood there in the rain while her whole life rearranged itself around those 2 small lines. She did not cry right away. She just breathed. In, out, in, out. Like a woman who had learned a long time ago that falling apart was a luxury she could not afford. Then 1 tear came, then another. Then she pressed her free hand flat against her stomach, and she whispered into the rain in a voice so small the city almost swallowed it whole. I'm going to be okay. We are going to be okay. She did not look convinced. If you have ever loved someone who could not see you standing right in front of them, then this story is going to feel very familiar. And if it already hurts somewhere in your chest right now, that means you're not watching this like a stranger. You're watching it like someone who has lived inside a version of this pain. This channel exists for people like you. People who understand that love is not always loud. Sometimes it is the quietest, most devastating thing in the world. If that is you, subscribe right now. Not because of a number on a screen, but because you deserve a space where your kind of depth is honored. Now let us go back to the beginning. 48 hours earlier, the world of Kim Tae-chan had been running exactly the way he designed it. Precise, silent, controlled. His office sat on the 32nd floor of a building in Midtown Manhattan that did not have his name anywhere on the front. That was intentional. Men like Kim did not announce themselves. They did not need to. Everyone who mattered already knew. He was on a call when his assistant, Park Sung-jin, a thin man in his early 40s who had worked for Kim since he was 26, knocked once and entered without waiting. That was code. It meant whatever he was carrying could not wait. Kim held up 1 finger to the phone, listened for 3 more seconds, then said, "End it," and hung up. He looked at Park. Park placed a single folder on the desk, stepped back, clasped his hands in front of him, and said nothing, because he already knew what was inside and he had no idea how to speak around it. Kim opened the folder. His face did not move, not one muscle. His jaw did not tighten, his eyes did not widen. He simply read, turned 1 page, read again. Then he closed the folder and set it down with the same calm he used for everything, and said, "When?" Park said, "The filing was submitted this morning. Her lawyer moved quietly." Kim said nothing. Park cleared his throat. "She's requesting no contact, no negotiation, clean separation." Still nothing. Park shifted his weight. "Sir, do you want me to—" "No," Kim said. Just that word. "No." He turned his chair toward the window. New York stretched out below him in all its noise and indifference. He sat there so still that Park eventually backed out of the room, pulled the door shut behind him, and stood in the hallway with his eyes closed for a moment. Because that folder contained Nina's divorce petition, and Kim Tae-chan had not even blinked. Now let us talk about Nina, because you need to understand who this woman was before you can understand what her leaving meant. Nina Michelle was 31 years old. She was Nigerian-born, raised in Lagos by a mother who believed that a quiet woman with strong hands could survive anything. Nina had inherited both the quiet and the strong hands. She was the kind of woman who could walk into a room and not demand attention, and somehow still be the most present person in it. She had a laugh that started in her shoulders before it reached her face. She had opinions she delivered gently, sound like she was handing you something fragile. She was, in short, the kind of woman who made a house feel like a home without anyone ever formally thanking her for it. She had met Kim Tai-chan 3 years ago at a business dinner she had attended with her former employer, an international logistics firm whose CEO moved in circles that overlapped with Kim's. She had not been placed at his table. She had been seated 3 rows away. And the first time Kim noticed her was not because she was beautiful, though she was. It was because she was the only person in that entire room who laughed at the right moment during a very dry speech that everyone else politely endured. He had found out her name before the appetizers arrived. They were married 6 months later. And Nina, who had never been naive about the world, Mai had told herself that love was something you chose and then built together. She had believed that. She had walked into that marriage with both hands open. What she had not fully understood was that Kim Tai-chan was not capable of building anything that did not also have a fortress around it. The first year was not terrible. Kim was not unkind. He was simply absent. Not physically, always. But emotionally, he was somewhere else, behind a wall she could press her hand against, but never get through. She would ask how his day was, and he would answer in 3 words. She would make dinner, and he would eat in silence and call it good. She would reach for him in the small ways that women reach, a touch on the shoulder, a joke, a question, and he would receive it without returning it, the way a wall receives a knock. She told herself it was his nature. She told herself he was under pressure. She told herself love was patient, and she could be patient. She was patient for 2.5 years. Then came the night of the Cheon Group Gala. It was a charity event, black tie, held in a hotel ballroom that glittered with chandeliers and expensive perfume. Nina wore a deep burgundy dress that her friend Adaez had helped her pick out during a video call from Lagos. She had done her own hair, taken her time with it, and when she came downstairs, Kim had looked at her once, said, "The car is waiting," and walked out. No other words. She had followed, because what else do you do when the man you love treats you like a detail he has already accounted for? At the gala, Kim moved through the room like a current. People came to him. He did not go to people. He shook hands, said little, commanded the attention of everyone around him without appearing to try. Nina stayed near him at first, then near him became beside him, became slightly behind him, became she was standing alone by the window with a glass of water. She was not drinking, watching her husband exist in a world that had no clear space for her in it. That was when she heard them. 2 women in the restroom, voices carrying through the thin wall, talking the way people talk when they think no one important is listening. That African woman? The wife? Yes. I feel sorry for her, honestly. Why? She married him. She married the idea of him. You can see it on her face every time she looks at him. She still thinks there's something there. A pause, then a soft laugh. She's decoration, that's all. The boss doesn't bring things into his life that aren't useful. When she stops being useful, she'll disappear. Nina stood on the other side of that wall and didn't move for a very long time. When she came back out, she found her smile again. She wore it for the rest of the evening like a piece of clothing she was returning in the morning. She stood beside Kim in photographs. She thanked people for compliments on her dress. She laughed at the right moments. And inside, something very quiet, very old, and very tired finally stopped fighting. 3 weeks after the gala, Kim came home to find a single envelope on the kitchen counter, placed carefully beside the bowl of fruit she always kept there. His name was written on the front in Nina's handwriting, clean, careful letters. No drama. Inside was 1 page, divorce petition. At the bottom, in smaller letters, I am not angry. I am just done waiting to be seen. Kim read it twice, set it down, made himself a cup of tea, and stood at the window of his own kitchen in silence for a long time. When Park asked him the next morning what he wanted to do, Kim said, "Process it." "Sir, exactly as she's requested. No counter. No negotiation. Process it. Park processed it. And that should have been the end. But the universe, as it turns out, had other plans. It started with a phone call Kim received 10 days after the divorce was finalized. The call came from a man named Dr. O. J. Wan, a private physician that Kim's organization kept on retainer for situations that required discretion. The call came at 6 in the morning. Kim was already awake, already dressed. So already 2 hours into a day, he was using work to fill the shape of what used to be a life. He answered on the second ring. Dr. O's voice was careful. "Mr. Kim, I apologize for the early hour. I need to report something. There is a complication. One of our records has been flagged. It concerns your former wife." Kim said nothing. Dr. O continued. "She came in 3 days ago. We should not have seen her. There was a clerical error, and she was seen by a staff member before anyone caught it. I am calling to advise you of the situation before it becomes a problem administratively, and also because..." A pause. "Because the information that was recorded is significant." Kim's voice was flat. "Say it." Dr. O said it. The silence that followed lasted 11 seconds. Park, who was standing in the doorway with a coffee he had just brought, uncounted them. Then Kim said, in a voice that was very, very quiet, "Say it again." Dr. O said it again. Kim set his phone down on the desk, did not hang up, just set it down. He stood up from his chair, which he almost never did during phone calls, and he walked to the window, and he stood there with his hands at his sides and his jaw doing something complicated. And Park took one step into the room and then stopped, because whatever was happening in Kim Tae-chan's face was not something you walked into. After a moment, Kim walked back to the desk, picked up the phone, said, "She is not to know you called me. Is that understood?" Dr. O said yes. Kim said, "Send me her last known address." Then he did something Park had not seen in 4 years of working closely with this man. He knocked a coffee mug off the edge of the desk, just with his hand, not intentionally. He caught it a second later, steady, controlled, set it back. But his hand, when it settled on the desk, was not entirely still. Park pretended not to notice. Nina, at that exact moment, was in a small apartment in Brooklyn, sitting on the edge of a second-hand couch, eating crackers because everything else made her stomach rebel. The apartment had one window that faced a brick wall. The radiator made a sound every night at 2 in the morning like it was coughing. The shower had weak pressure, and the kitchen was so small that if she dropped something, she could catch it before it hit the floor. It was the most peaceful place she had lived in 3 years. She had her feet tucked under her, a notepad in her lap, and she was making a list. She made lists when she was scared. It helped her feel like the world had edges she could work within. The list said, "Doctor. Next week. Prenatal vitamins. Call Adas. Figure out work. Do not call him." That last one she had underlined. Her phone buzzed. She looked. Unknown number. She declined it. Then looked at the 2 lines on the test she had saved, sitting on the little shelf by the window like an accusation or a miracle. She had not decided yet which one it was. "Okay," she said to herself, or to the baby, or to the universe. She said it like a declaration and a question at the same time. "Okay." Her name was on a lease for the first time in 3 years. She was making enough from her remote consulting work to cover basics. She had no backup plan, no safety net, no one in New York who knew her situation fully. But she had herself. And she had always, or when it came down to it, been enough. She ate another cracker. The radiator coughed. She wrote prenatal vitamins in capital letters and underlined it twice. Now. Kim Tae-chan did not go to Nina that day, or the next. Not because he did not know where she was. He knew within 4 hours of making one call. He had the address, the name on the lease, the name of the consulting firm she worked with, the pharmacy 2 blocks from her apartment where she had started a new account. His people were thorough. They were always thorough. He did not go because he was, for the first time in a very long time, genuinely unsure of what to do. This was so unusual that Park actually asked, quietly and with great care, whether Kim wanted to talk through any decisions, and Kim had looked at him with an expression that said the question was appreciated and would not be answered, and Park had returned to his own desk and pretended to review invoices while watching his employer stare at nothing for 20 minutes. The thing about Kim Tae-chan that most people misread was this. They thought his coldness was indifference. It was not. It was control. And there is a very important difference between a man who does not feel things and a man who has spent his entire life building walls, specifically because he feels too much, and learned early that feelings were a liability in his world. Kim had grown up in the kind of environment where softness was punished. His father had been a man of very few words and very clear consequences. His world from the age of 14 had been one of survival mathematics. While you calculated, you moved pieces. You did not let anything reach you that you could not absorb without losing function. Nina had, in her quiet way, gotten closer than anyone. He had known it even as it was happening, had watched her make the cold rooms of his life warm, and had told himself it was fine, it was manageable. She was there, and he was managing it. What he had not calculated was what the rooms would feel like after she left. The house in Manhattan had been silent in a way that was different from his preferred silence. His preferred silence was chosen. This one was empty. It had a shape to it, the shape of a woman who used to hum while she cooked, who left half-read books on the side table, who sometimes said goodnight to the city through the window before she came to bed, like she was being polite to New York. He had told himself the first week that he would adjust. He was a man who adjusted. By the second week, he had stopped eating dinner at the table. By the third week, he had moved most of his working hours to the office because the house made him too aware of the quality of its quiet. And now, sitting with this information, with this new development that changed the geometry of everything, he was doing what he almost never did. He was sitting with the weight of a mistake, not the divorce. He had not processed whether the divorce was a mistake. He had told himself it was necessary, and he had not let himself revisit that. What he was sitting with was something older. The years of absence, the gala, the way she had looked at him at their one-year anniversary dinner, when she had set up the table with candles, and he had come home 2 hours late and said simply, "Sorry, meeting ran over. Are you hungry?" He was sitting with all of it now because she was pregnant and alone in a small apartment in Brooklyn, and it was raining tonight, and the knowledge of both those things simultaneously was doing something to the inside of his chest that he did not have a clean word for. Park, who was still pretending to review invoices, looked up and found Kim standing in the doorway of his own office in his coat. "I'm going out," Kim said. "Where?" Park asked, then immediately corrected himself. "Should I send a car?" "No. Sir, without security." "No," Kim said again, and there was something in his voice that made Park stop, because it was not the usual. No, it was not commanding. It was just tired. Like a man saying, "Leave me alone with this for one night." Park let him go. Kim drove himself through Brooklyn in the rain. He found her street. He sat in the car outside her building for 12 minutes. Her window was lit. He could see the outline of warm light through curtains he did not recognize. Curtains she must have put up herself in this new place, this new life she was building without him. He did not go up. He sat there. And for a man who had never been uncertain about a single action in 15 years of operating in one of the most dangerous organizations on the East Coast, he was, tonight, unable to move. His phone rang. He looked at the screen. It was his second in command, Choi Beom-soo, which meant something was happening that required him to be Kim Tae-chan again, not whatever he currently was. He answered, listened, and drove away from her building without going in. But he looked in the rearview mirror once. Just once. The light in her window stayed on. Nina, at that moment, was on a video call with her best friend Adaze, who was in Lagos, who had been Nina's person since secondary school, and who reacted to the pregnancy news the way only Adaze could, which was to be completely silent for 4 seconds and then say, "You are not joking." "I'm not joking," Nina said. Another silence. Nina, "I know. How long?" 8 weeks, maybe 9. "And him? Does he—" "No," Nina said firmly, "and I'm not telling him." Adaze's face on the screen did something complicated. She was a straightforward woman, practical, the kind of friend who told you the truth even when it was inconvenient. She said, "Nina, that is his child. I know whose child it is. So you're going to just— I'm going to handle it, Adaze. I handled this whole marriage alone. I can handle this." Adaze pressed her lips together. "You handled the marriage alone because he let you. You should not have to handle this alone." "I know that." Nina's voice was very quiet. "But I spent 3 years being invisible to that man. I am not going to now become visible only because of a pregnancy. I refuse. I will not be the woman who gets tolerated because of a baby." That landed. Adaze was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Okay, what do you need from me?" Nina exhaled, and for the first time since the test, her shoulders came down slightly. "I need you to help me figure out a plan. And I need you to not tell anyone." "No one," Adaze agreed. "And I need you to stop looking at me like that." "Like what?" "Like I am a tragedy." Adaze shook her head. "You are not a tragedy, Nina. You are stubborn, and you are scared, and you love him more than you are saying right now." Nina said nothing. "That's fine," Adaze said gently. "You don't have to admit it tonight. But eventually— Good night, Adaze. Good night, my love. Eat something that isn't crackers." Nina looked at the crackers on her lap. "I don't know what you're talking about." She hung up, pulled her knees to her chest, looked at the window, at the rain coming down, at the city doing its endless city things. And she let herself, for exactly 2 minutes, miss him. Miss the version of him she had believed in. Or miss the way he had looked at her the night they got married, just for a moment, before the shutters came back down. Miss the warmth that existed in him somewhere behind all that careful control. 2 minutes exactly. Then she straightened up, made a cup of ginger tea, added the prenatal vitamins to her online shopping cart, and went to bed. She was going to be okay. She was going to be more than okay. But the universe, as we said, had other plans. The next morning, Kim Tae-chan walked into a private clinic on the Upper East Side and asked to speak to Dr. Oh Jae-won in person. Dr. Oh was a small man, meticulous, who wore his glasses low on his nose, and who had seen enough of Kim's world over the years to know when a conversation needed to be had very carefully. Kim sat down across from him and said, "Tell me everything." Dr. Oh told him everything. The 8 to 9 weeks, the stress indicators in her blood work, the fact that she had come alone, told the nurse she had no emergency contact, and specifically requested, in writing, that her visit not be connected to any previous records under a married name. Kim listened without speaking until Dr. O was done. Then he said, "What does she need?" Dr. O said, "Rest, reduced stress, consistent prenatal care. She is healthy, but her cortisol levels are elevated, and that can—" "What does she need?" Kim said again. And it was not a question the second time. It was a man trying to understand a problem he could not solve with money, or force, or precision, which left him with almost nothing in his toolkit. Dr. O looked at him carefully. "She needs support. Practical and emotional. That is what she needs." Kim stood up. Art thanked him. Left. In the car, he called Park. "I need everything we have on enemy movement near the Brooklyn area, specifically anything connected to Sion's people." Park, who was used to surprising instructions, said, "You think they know about her?" "They will," Kim said. "If they've been watching me at all, they will work it out eventually. And if they find out she's pregnant. He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Park said, "I'll have it in an hour." Kim said, "Make it 30 minutes." What you need to understand here is that Kim Tae-chon operated in a world where leverage was currency. His enemies, specifically a rival organization led by a man named Seon Dae-hyun, had been looking for years for a pressure point on Kim. Something they could use. Something that could make him react instead of calculate. He had spent 15 years making sure no such thing existed. No attachments, no visible soft spots, no one who could be used against him. He had believed, when he signed those divorce papers, that he was removing Nina from the board entirely, cutting the connection before his enemies could weaponize it. He had not thought it through far enough, because now Nina was out there, visible, alone, and carrying the one thing in the world that, if Seon's people discovered it, would be the most devastating weapon anyone had ever held against Kim Tae-chon. Park called back in 28 minutes. The news was not good. There had been movement. Seon's people had been collecting information on people connected to Kim, former staff, associates, family members. They were building something, a list of vulnerabilities. Nina is on a list," Park said quietly. Kim's hands were very still on the steering wheel. "Under what category?" Kim said. Park hesitated. Then, "Former wife. Status unclear. Location they don't have yet. But they're looking." "How long before they find her?" "At the rate they're moving. Maybe 2 weeks. Maybe less." 2 weeks. Kim sat in his car on a Manhattan side street and did the mathematics of this situation. He had 2 weeks, maybe less, to either secure Nina in a way she would accept or to neutralize the threat at its source. Option 2 would take time he might not have. Option 1 required Nina's cooperation, which she had made very, very clear she was not interested in giving him. He thought about her face through that lit window last night. He thought about her writing on that divorce petition. "I am not angry. I am just done waiting to be seen." He thought about 2 lines on a pregnancy test and a woman sitting alone in Brooklyn eating crackers and making lists, because that is what she did when she was scared. And something inside Kim Tae-chon, something that had been sealed very tightly for a very long time, developed a crack. He had told himself, when he signed the papers, that it was protection, that keeping distance from him was the safest thing for her, that he was doing her a favor. He had told himself this with great conviction. But sitting here now, with the knowledge of everything at once, the pregnancy, the enemy movement, the lit window, Seon's list, the crackers, the way she had looked at the gala when she thought no one was watching her, the truth he had been avoiding was becoming very hard to maintain. He had not let her go to protect her. He had let her go because loving her required him to become something he did not know how to be. Something open. Something present. Something that could not also survive in the world he lived in. He had taken the easier exit, and now she was paying for it. Now they both were. He started the car. He had work to do. But first, there was something he needed to do that had nothing to do with strategy or security or enemy organizations. Something he had been avoiding for weeks. Something that required him to drive back to Brooklyn and do the thing he was not good at. Show up. The building Nina lived in had an intercom system that buzzed and then buzzed again. She heard it on the 3rd ring from inside her apartment and assumed it was a delivery she had forgotten about. She pressed the speak button without thinking and said, "Yes?" The voice on the other end was very familiar. She stepped back from the intercom like it had made a sound she was not prepared for. "Nina," Kim said. "I know you're not going to want to open the door. I am asking you to open it anyway." She stood in her small apartment with her hand pressed to her mouth and her heart doing something extremely unhelpful. Then she said, through the intercom, "How did you find me?" It was not a question. He said, "Nina." She said, "Go away," he said. "I am not going to go away." "Kim, I know," he said, and his voice, through the crackle of the cheap intercom, did something it almost never did. It cracked. Just slightly. Just enough. "I know I don't deserve to be here. I know you owe me nothing. I know I signed those papers without a fight. But I'm asking you to open the door anyway." Silence. She looked around her apartment, at the crackers, at the notepad with the list, at the prenatal vitamins she had just ordered, and the curtains she had put up herself, and the whole quiet, careful life she was constructing. She pressed the button. "You have 5 minutes," she said, and she buzzed him in. When he knocked, she opened the door and looked at him for the first time since the papers were filed. He was wearing a dark coat. He looked exactly the same. That was the infuriating thing. Men like him always looked exactly the same, while you were in here falling apart and rebuilding yourself and falling apart again. She left the door open and walked back into the apartment, sat on the couch, crossed her arms, waited. He came in, looked around once, taking in the apartment, the curtains, on the shelf, the notepad, not saying anything about any of it. And then he turned to her and said, "Are you okay?" She stared at him. "You came to Brooklyn in the rain to ask if I am okay." "Yes." "Kim." "Yes." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "I'm fine. I'm handling it. Whatever it is you think you know, whatever is bringing you to my door at..." She looked at the time. 9 in the morning on a Thursday. "I am fine, and I am handling it, and I do not need..." "Sion's people are looking for you," he said. That stopped her. The room went very still. She looked at him. "What did you say?" "They are building a list of people connected to me. You are on it. They don't have your location yet. But they will." Nina uncrossed her arms. Her hands came to rest on her knees. She was very still now. The processing kind of still. Why?" she said carefully. "Would they be looking for me? I am your ex-wife. There is no connection anymore. We signed papers." "Paper doesn't change what you are to me," Kim said. And then, as if he surprised himself with that, he looked slightly away. Nina watched him. "And what am I to you?" she said, quietly. Not angrily, just genuinely asking, the way someone asks a question they have wanted to ask for a very long time. He looked back at her, and she saw it then, just briefly. That thing he almost never let anyone see. The difficulty of him, the weight of whatever he was carrying. He said, "You are not safe right now. That is what I know for certain. Everything else..." He stopped. "Everything else I'm still working out." She stared at him. "You have the worst timing," she said. "I know. Of any person I have ever met. I know." A long silence. The radiator coughed. Kim looked at it, then back at her, and something happened in his face that was not a smile, but was the closest he had come in a long time to one. "Does it always do that?" "Every night at 2, she said. "I've named it Gerald." He looked at the radiator again. "Gerald. He has a personality." Kim said nothing. She said nothing. And somewhere in that terrible small apartment, with the rain outside and Gerald coughing, and the prenatal vitamins sitting in an online cart, and everything between them still unresolved and complicated and enormous, there was a silence that was not empty. It had something in it. Something careful and fragile and not yet named. "I'm not moving in with you," Nina said. "No, I didn't ask. I'm not going back to that house. I didn't ask that either." "Then what are you asking?" He looked at her, directly, which wasn't something he always did. "Let me make sure you are safe. That is all I am asking right now. You don't have to forgive me. You don't have to talk to me. You don't have to do anything except let me make sure no one can reach you." She searched his face. "And the baby," she said. It came out before she decided to say it. She saw it land on him, watched his face do something she had never seen it do before. Not shock exactly. More like the moment when a man who has been holding something very heavy is finally allowed to set it down. He said very quietly, "The baby." "Yes," she said. And her voice was steady, but her hands were not. She had pressed them flat on her knees to stop them shaking. "No, you already knew. That's why you're here. Don't pretend otherwise, Kim. I know you." He did not pretend otherwise. He sat down, not on the couch beside her, on the single chair across from her, like a man who understood that proximity was something to be earned, and he had not earned it yet. He said, "I knew." "How long?" 2 days. "Who told you?" "Someone who shouldn't have. I'll deal with that separately." She looked at him for a long time. There was so much in her face: anger, exhaustion. And underneath both of those, the thing that had always been there, that she had tried very hard to address logically, that survived even the gala and the divorce petition and the crackers and the small apartment. The love she had not quite managed to stop. She hated that about herself a little. She hated it significantly less than she expected. "So I wasn't going to tell you," she said. "I know. That was not cruelty. I want you to understand that. I wasn't trying to punish you. I just—" She pressed her lips together. "I did not want to be the woman who traps a man with a baby. I did not want any part of what would come next if you knew. The obligation, the management, the—" She stopped. "You would have done the right thing. I know you would have done the right thing. And I did not want the right thing. I wanted—" She stopped. He waited. She looked at him. "I don't want to say it." "Say it anyway," he said. And it was quiet. And it was careful. And it was the most attention he had ever directed entirely at her. And she felt it like something physical. She said, "I wanted to be wanted, not managed, not obligated. I wanted—" Her voice dropped. "I just wanted to matter. Not because of a baby. Not because of a bloodline or a legal situation. I wanted to have mattered before any of this." He looked at her. Then he said the thing that she was not ready for. "You did," he said. "You do. I know I never showed you that. I know that's not enough. But I want you to know it's true." The silence that followed was very long. The rain kept falling. Gerald coughed, and Nina Michelle, who had survived 3 years of invisibility and a divorce and 8 weeks of pregnancy alone, felt one tear move down her face. Just one. She let it. She didn't reach up to stop it. "You have terrible timing," she said again, but softer this time. "I know," he said. There are women in the comments right now who have been exactly where Nina is sitting, who have loved someone who could not show up until the damage was already done, who had to decide in a moment like this one what they were worth and what they were willing to accept. If that is you, stay with this story, because what happens next is not simple. It does not resolve cleanly, but it is true. And you deserve to see what happens when a woman who knows her own worth forces a man to rise to it. That is the kind of love this channel tells. Drop a word in the comments if you have ever had to decide, alone, what you were worth. We are listening. She did not let him stay that night. She made that clear in the way Nina made most things clear, without raising her voice, without drama, just a calm and final statement, delivered from the doorway as she held it open. "You can go now," she said. "I have heard you. I will think about the safety situation, but I need you to leave." Kim stood up from the chair. He did not argue. He did not try to negotiate more time or press for a decision. He simply nodded, picked up his coat, and walked to the door. He stopped just beside her, close enough that she could smell the rain still on his jacket. He looked at her once, directly, the way he had been doing tonight that was different from the way he used to look at her, which was the look of a man who was managing a situation. This was the look of a man who was actually seeing a person. He said, "You are not alone in this, whatever you decide. I want you to know that." She said nothing. He left. She closed the door, put her back against it, stared at the ceiling of her small apartment for a very long time. Then she went and ate more crackers and told herself she was fine. She was mostly fine. The next morning, Kim called a meeting. Not the kind of meeting that happened around a table with coffee and agendas. The kind that happened in a basement room in a building in Queens that had no windows and one entrance, and where the people who sat around the table all had the kind of eyes that had seen things that did not make it into polite conversation. Park was there. Choi Beom-soo was there, Kim's second in command, a broad man in his late 40s, with a shaved head and a scar along his left jaw that he had stopped explaining to people years ago. There were 3 others, lieutenants, men who had been with Kim long enough to know that when he called a meeting at 7 in the morning, something significant was shifting. Kim stood at the head of the table and did not sit down. He said, "Seon's people have a list. We are accelerating the response. Quick, I want eyes on every name on that list within 48 hours. I want to know what they know, and I want to know how they're moving." Choi said, "We've been tracking 3 of his key people. They're collecting information, not acting yet. They're building something larger." "What kind of something?" Kim said. Choi glanced at Park, then back at Kim. "The kind that uses people to send messages. They're not planning a confrontation. They're planning leverage." Silence. Kim said, "Prioritize anyone who is not in this organization. Anyone civilian." Choi said, "Including former Mrs. Kim?" The room got very still. Kim looked at Choi. Choi, who had been with Kim for 12 years and had survived this long, partly because he understood when to push and when to stop, looked back steadily but said nothing else. Kim said, "Her name is Nina." And yes, on her first. Choi nodded. No further comment. This was one of those small moments that told you everything about the temperature of a situation without anyone raising their voice. Every man in that room recalibrated something quietly. Because Kim had just said her name in a meeting. Kim did not say names in meetings unless the person attached to the name mattered. And Kim did not let things matter. That was his whole system. That was the architecture of how he survived. Something had changed. Park caught Choi's eye across the table. Choi gave the smallest possible raise of one eyebrow. Park looked back at his notes. Later, walking out to the car, Choi fell into step beside Park and said, very quietly, "How long has this been happening?" Park said, "Longer than he knows." Choi made a small sound, not quite a laugh, more like the sound of a man watching something inevitable arrive. "She must be extraordinary." "She names the radiator," Park said. Choi stared at him. "What?" "Never mind." Across the city, Nina was at her first official prenatal appointment with an obstetrician she had found herself, paid for herself, and attended by herself. The doctor was a warm Jamaican woman named Dr. Campbell, who had short natural hair and spoke with the kind of directness that Nina appreciated enormously. Dr. Campbell said, "You are healthy. Baby is healthy. Your iron is a little low, so we will add a supplement. Your cortisol levels are elevated, which tells me your stress level is high. Is there anything happening in your life that we should talk about?" Nina looked at the ceiling of the examination room. "Where do I start?" Dr. Campbell smiled. "Somewhere," Nina said. "I recently went through a divorce. I live alone. The baby's father does not know." She stopped. "The baby's father recently found out. Situation is complicated." "Most situations are," Dr. Campbell said, making notes. "Is he supportive?" Nina thought about Kim sitting in the small chair across from her, saying you do matter, saying you are not alone. She thought about the radiator joke. She thought about how he had not pushed, had not argued, had simply accepted the boundary she set and left when she asked. She said, "He is trying." Dr. Campbell looked up over her glasses. "That's more than many women get." "It's less than I needed for 3 years," Nina said quietly. Dr. Campbell held her gaze for a moment. Fair. And now? Nina thought about it honestly. Now, I don't know yet. I'm trying to figure out who he is deciding to be, and whether that person showed up too late or just in time. Dr. Campbell said, well, whatever you decide, this baby needs your stress levels to come down. So maybe give yourself permission to let someone help you, not because you can't do it alone, because you don't have to. Nina was quiet for a moment. You sound like my friend Adaz, she said. Dr. Campbell said, your friend Adaz sounds smart. Nina smiled, just slightly. She is extremely irritating about it. She left the appointment with a folder of information, a new supplement, and the particular feeling of a woman who has been given advice she knows is correct and is not yet ready to fully act on. She stood on the sidewalk outside the clinic, the November air sharp and clean, and she called Adaz. Adaz picked up on the first ring. How was the appointment? Good. Baby is fine. I am fine. And Kim? Why does everyone go straight to Kim? Because you do, Adaz said simply. In your head. Every time. So how is Kim? Nina started walking. He came to my apartment yesterday. The sound from Lagos was something between a gasp and a word that the YouTube algorithm would not enjoy. Then, he did what? He found me. He knew about the baby. He came. Nina, he said he wants to make sure I'm safe. There is apparently a threat situation. His enemies are looking for people connected to him, and I am on a list. Adaz absorbed this. So he came because of danger. He came because of both, Nina said. And she surprised herself by saying it, because she had spent the night trying to tell herself it was only the security situation. That he was being practical. That Kim was always practical. But the way he had looked at her, the way he had said her name, the way he had sat in that chair like a man who was choosing carefully to take up as little space as possible, because he understood he had not earned more. That was not purely practical. That was something else. Adaz said, "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," Nina said honestly. "I don't know if I trust that this is real. I don't know if he is capable of being what this baby and I are going to need. I know that 3 years of evidence says no. And I know that last night felt different. And I am very tired of making decisions while pregnant and stressed. So I am choosing to walk and breathe and eat something that isn't crackers." "Good," Adaz said. "What are you eating?" "I'm going to find soup." "Good girl. Call me tonight." "Yes, Mother. I will accept that," Adaz said with great dignity. "Call me." Nina found a small Caribbean restaurant 2 blocks from the clinic, ordered pepper soup and rice, sat by the window, watched the city move, and did not let herself think about Kim for 11 whole minutes. It was a personal best. Kim, at that same hour, was doing something extremely unusual for a man of his particular occupation. He was shopping, not for anything related to his work. He was standing in a pharmacy 4 blocks from Nina's apartment, holding 2 different brands of prenatal vitamins, reading the labels with the focused attention he normally reserved for intelligence reports, while a teenage store employee watched him from the end of the aisle with a look of complete confusion. Park, who had driven him here and was now waiting in the car, had offered to come in. Kim had said no. He had said no because this was not something he could delegate. He was not entirely sure why he felt that so strongly. He only knew that it would be wrong to send someone else to do this particular thing. He chose the vitamins. He added ginger tea because he remembered she drank it when her stomach bothered her. She had mentioned it once, 2 years ago. He had apparently retained the information without knowing why. He added 3 other things the pharmacist suggested when he described the situation with the careful brevity of a man who had never once talked to a stranger about his personal life and found it excruciating. He brought everything to Nina's building. He did not ring the intercom, and he left the bag with the building's front desk manager, a heavy-set older man named Roy, who regarded him with deep suspicion and asked 3 separate times who he was and what his relationship to the resident was. Kim said, "Former husband. Give her the bag. Tell her it's from Kim." Roy looked at him. "She's a real nice lady, that one," Kim said. "I know. We get protective of our residents," Roy said, with absolutely no subtlety. "Good," Kim said. "I'd like to pay 3 months advance on her building security improvements, if there's a management contact." Roy stared at him. Kim left his card on the desk. Roy looked at the card, looked at the bag, looked at the door Kim had walked out of. Then he picked up the bag very carefully, like it was important now, and took it upstairs. When Nina opened her door to Roy's knock and looked at the bag, and opened it, and saw the vitamins, the exact brand her doctor had recommended that morning, and the ginger tea, her hand went very still on the handle of the bag. Roy said, "Man left it. Said to say it was from Kim. Real quiet fella. Intense eyes." Nina stared at the bag. "He also left a card with management about security upgrades," Roy added, in the tone of a man delivering information he found philosophically significant. Nina said, "Thank you, Roy." Roy said, "You need anything, Miss Nina. You call the desk." He left. She sat down on her couch with the bag in her lap. The vitamins were the right brand. She had not told him which brand. She had not told him anything, which meant he had gone and found out, which meant he had stood in a pharmacy and read labels and asked questions and done the unglamorous small work of trying to take care of someone. That was not the Kim she had lived with for 3 years. Or maybe it was. Maybe it was the Kim that had existed underneath all of that silence and distance and control. The one who watched her sometimes and never approached. The one who had married her in the first place. The one who remembered she drank ginger tea. She pressed the bag against her chest. She sat there for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and typed a message. Stared at it. Deleted it. Typed it again. She sent it. It said, "The vitamins are the right ones. Thank you." 3 minutes later, her phone showed one word back. Good. She looked at that one word for an embarrassing length of time. Then she put the phone down and went to make ginger tea. Now, while Nina was reconstructing her feelings in Brooklyn with the assistance of pharmaceutical-grade vitamins and hot water, something was moving in a different part of the city that neither of them was ready for. Seon Dae-hyun was not a man who announced himself loudly. He was 61 years old, slight, with silver hair he kept impeccably, and a manner so quiet and pleasant that people who did not know his history regularly underestimated him. People who knew his history did not make that mistake twice. Most of them did not make it once. He sat in a restaurant in Flushing, Queens, at a corner table, eating alone. Across from him sat a woman named Ji-yeon, who was 29, and who appeared to be having lunch with a grandfather. She was not. She was one of his best analysts, and she was showing him something on a tablet. "We have her," Ji-yeon said quietly. "Brooklyn. She's been there 6 weeks. She's working remotely, keeps a low profile. No security. No protection." Seon looked at the tablet, looked at the address. "And the pregnancy?" Ji-yeon's eyes did not flicker. "Confirmed. Approximately 9 weeks. She has a prenatal appointment today at a clinic in—" "I don't need the clinic," Seon said pleasantly. He set the tablet down. "I need to understand what she means to him." "He signed the divorce papers immediately," Ji-yeon said. "No contest." Seon smiled. It did not reach anywhere near his eyes. "Yes." And then he drove to Brooklyn and sat outside her building in the rain for 12 minutes before driving away. And this morning, he went to a pharmacy near her apartment. He paused. A man who signs papers without hesitation does not sit in the rain outside her building. Ji-yeon was quiet. Seon picked up his chopsticks again. "She means something. The child will mean more. This is what we have been waiting for." He ate a small amount of something. "We are not going to move yet. We are going to let him come to her. And then we are going to watch what he does to protect her. and that will show us exactly where to apply pressure." He ate quietly for a moment. "Make sure she is watched carefully," he said. "But do not touch her. Not yet." Ji-yeon said, "And if Kim increases her security?" Se-yeon said, "Then we know for certain she matters. Either way, we learned something useful." Ji-yeon took the tablet back, stood, left. Se-yeon continued eating. This is the moment where the story tightens. This is the point of no return. And it is also the point where every person watching needs to ask themselves, what does it take to protect someone you have failed? What does it cost a man who has spent his life behind walls to tear them down fast enough to matter? Stay. Because what Kim does next is going to surprise you, and what Nina discovers is going to change everything. If you have ever been the person someone woke up too late to protect, this next part is for you. Kim found out about Se-yeon's surveillance the next day. He was sitting in his office when Park came in with the particular expression that meant the news was bad and had a clock attached to it. Park set a folder on the desk. Kim opened it. Inside was a photograph, grainy, taken from a distance. It showed a woman sitting in a car across the street from Nina's building. Kim looked at the photograph for a long time. Ji-yeon, he said. He knew who she was. He kept very thorough files on Se-yeon's people. Yes, Park said. She was there for 2 hours this morning. She's gone now, but she'll be back. They know where Nina lives. Yes. Kim closed the folder. How much time do we have before they move from surveillance to action? Se-yeon doesn't move fast, Park said carefully. He is building something. He wants to use her, not harm her, at least initially. Initially, Kim said. Yes. Kim stood up. We move her today. Park hesitated. She's not going to want to move. I know. She's going to be very unhappy about this. I know that too. She might. Park, Kim said. Sir. I know. Prepare the option. He drove to Brooklyn himself again. No advance call this time. But he was not going to give her the opportunity to tell him not to come over the intercom. He rang the bell, told Roy his name, and Roy, who had apparently shifted opinions overnight, based on the vitamin delivery and the security card, let him up without the interrogation. He knocked on her door. Footsteps inside. A pause that told him she had looked through the peephole and was deciding. Then the door opened. She was wearing a loose sweater and had her reading glasses on, which meant she had been working, which meant he had interrupted her day, which she was clearly communicating through the angle of her posture. Kim, she said. Not warmly, but not coldly either. The way you say the name of someone whose right to be at your door is still being deliberated. Can I come in? He said. She stepped back. He came in. She sat on the couch. He sat in the chair. Same geography as before. He noticed she had put a small plant on the shelf beside the window since yesterday. Small green thing in a terracotta pot. She had made this place more of a home in 6 weeks than some people managed in years. He said, They know where you are. Her posture changed immediately. She took the reading glasses off. Se-yeon's people. Yes. You're sure? We have photographs of surveillance from this morning. They have been watching this building. They know this address. She processed this. She was not a panicked person. She moved through information carefully, and then responded, which was one of the things that had always made her exceptional in a room full of people who reacted before they thought. She said, What do they plan to do? Use you. Leverage. Se-yeon is not a man who moves to harm directly if he can move to control instead. But, she said, because there was obviously a but he is also a man who removes complications when the situation calls for it. And a pregnancy. Kim stopped, then continued. If they learn about the pregnancy, the calculus changes. A child is not only leverage. A child is a very permanent kind of threat. Nina was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You want me to move? Yes. To where? I have a property. It is fully secured. It is not connected to my name in any traceable way. You would have everything you need. Your own space, privacy. I would not. He paused. I would not intrude on that privacy unless you asked. She looked at him. You're asking me to move into one of your properties. A safe house, he said. Not my home. Oh, a different property. And what happens to my apartment? My lease. It stays. As far as anyone knows, you are still here. We will maintain the appearance. She stood up, walked to her small window, looked at the brick wall. Outside somewhere, she now knew, there was a woman in a car who had been watching this building, looking at her life from the outside. The thought made her skin feel wrong. She turned back. I want to be very clear about something. Tell me, he said. I am not moving because I am coming back to you. I am not moving because I have made any decision about us, about the baby, about anything. I am moving because I am not going to put this child at risk because of pride. Are we clear on that? Completely clear, he said. I choose my own bedroom. I choose my own schedule. I choose who comes and goes. Yes. And I need to be able to work. My clients cannot know my location has changed. That's manageable. And I need. She stopped, crossed her arms, looked at him with the expression of a woman about to say something she found difficult. I need you to not be in there pretending everything is normal. I need space to think. Real space. You have it, he said. I am not asking for anything from you, Nina. I am asking to make sure you are safe. That is the only ask. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, Fine, I'll pack a bag. He nodded, stood up. She went to the bedroom. He stood in the small living room and looked at the plant she had put on the shelf, small and green and very alive. He looked at the list on the notepad she had left on the couch arm, saw he did not read it, but he could see his name was not on it. That was appropriate. He looked at Gerald the radiator. Gerald did not cough. Good, Kim said to the radiator, very quietly. And then he turned away before he could think about why he had done that. She came out with a bag that told him she was being practical, not dramatic, not overpacked with the weight of a woman who thought she was leaving for good, not underpacked with the defiance of a woman making a point. Just a bag. Practical. Nina. She picked up the vitamins from the counter, put them in the bag. She picked up the ginger tea. Put it in the bag. He noticed. He said nothing. She stopped at the door, looked back at her apartment, at the curtains she had put up, the plant, the notepad, the life she had started building. This is temporary, she said, unto herself as much as to him. Yes, he said. She walked out the door. He followed. The safe house was in a quiet residential area of Long Island, far enough from Manhattan to feel like a different world, close enough that the city was still a presence on the horizon at night. The house was white, simple from the outside, with a garden that had gone slightly wild in November, and tall hedges that provided natural privacy. Inside it was warm and well furnished, not extravagantly, just well, the kind of space someone had thought carefully about. Nina walked through it in silence. 3 bedrooms, a proper kitchen, a study with a desk and good light, a living room with bookshelves already stocked. She pulled one out and looked at it, put it back. A garden that in spring would probably be something. She stood in the kitchen and said, who chose the books? Kim, standing in the doorway, said, Park? She raised an eyebrow. Park reads Toni Morrison? Park reads everything, Kim said. He is a deeply strange man. She almost laughed. She controlled it, but not quite completely. Kim saw it, did not remark on it, but something in his face softened by a degree that would have been invisible to anyone who did not know what they were looking for. She chose the bedroom at the end of the hall, the one farthest from the master bedroom that Kim would apparently be using when he stayed. Because apparently he was staying. She had not asked about that directly, and she was choosing not to address it yet, because there were only so many battles a pregnant woman could pick in one afternoon. She set her bag on the bed, looked around. The room had a window that faced the garden, and she went back to the kitchen. Kim was making tea. She stopped in the doorway. He was standing at the stove with the same focused attention he brought to everything, reading the back of the ginger tea box like it required decoding. He had his jacket off. He had his sleeves pushed up. He looked, for the first time she could remember in a long time, like a regular person in a kitchen trying to make tea. He looked up. She said, "You do know how to make tea." "I'm learning," he said, with complete sincerity. She sat down at the kitchen table. "Put the water on first." "I did. Then steep it for 5 minutes, not 3. 5, he repeated. Looked at the box. "It says 3. "It's wrong," she said. 5. He looked at the box, looked at her. "You're telling me the box is wrong." "I'm telling you I've been making this tea for years, and I know what I am talking about." He set the box down. 5 minutes, he said. Like a man accepting a correction for the first time in recent memory. She watched him. There was something almost painful about it, the domesticity of it. This man who ran an empire making ginger tea in a safe house kitchen because she was pregnant and scared, and he had run out of ways to say sorry that did not involve doing something. She said, "Kim." He looked at her. She said, "Why did you sign the papers so fast?" The question had been inside her since the day the lawyers confirmed it. She had told herself it did not matter. She had told herself many things that turned out to not be entirely true. He set the mug on the counter, turned to face her properly. "Because you asked me to." "That's not an answer." "It is an answer. It's not a good one." He paused. "I told myself it was protection. That letting you go was the right thing. That my world was too dangerous, and you would be safer away from it." Was that true? "Partly," he said. "The danger is real. What I didn't admit was that protection was not the only reason. It was also—" He looked away briefly, then back. "It was easier to let you go and call it a decision than to stay and face what I was not giving you." Nina looked at her hands. "That is the most honest thing you have said to me in 3 years, she said. He said, "I know." She looked up. "Are you going to go back to being that person, the honest one? Or is this the crisis version? And in 6 weeks, you will be closed again, and I will be sitting in this kitchen, talking to myself." He sat down across from her. He did not answer immediately, which she respected more than if he had. Then he said, "I don't know how to be a different person overnight, Nina. I know what I was. I know it was not enough. I know that the way I treated you, the absence, the silence, the gala—" He stopped. His jaw did something. "The gala. I know what that night cost you. I have known for a long time." She said very quietly, "You were watching me." "Yes," he said. "I always was. I just never—" He stopped again. "Never came to where I was standing," she said. "No." The water began to boil. He got up to make the tea, set the timer for 5 minutes. She watched him standing at the counter with his back to her, and she thought about 3 years of being the woman who turned toward a man who was always, always facing the window. And she thought about this man in a pharmacy reading the back of a vitamin bottle. And she thought about Gerald and the plant on the shelf and the list she still had, not crossed everything off of, and the 2 lines on the test that had rearranged everything. She said, "I am not forgiving you tonight." "I know," he said. "Not hurt. Just steady. I am not making any promises. I'm not asking for any. But I am." She paused. The word was harder than she expected. "I am willing to see what you are deciding to be. I am willing to watch that and see if it is real." He turned around. She met his eyes. "That is more than I deserve right now," he said. Yes, she agreed. It is. Don't waste it. The timer went off. He poured the tea, set it in front of her, sat back down. She wrapped both hands around the mug. Outside, the November garden was dark and still. The hedges stood their quiet guard. Somewhere in Manhattan, Seon Dae-hyun was having dinner and moving pieces on a board neither of them could fully see yet. Somewhere in Lagos, Daisy was probably already composing the text she would send Nina in the morning, asking for a full update. Somewhere in a Queens parking structure, two of Kim's men were watching a car they were not supposed to know about yet. But here, in a kitchen in Long Island, a man who had spent his life behind walls was sitting across from a woman who had spent 3 years knocking on them, and they were both holding something fragile and nameless. And for the moment, neither of them was letting go. "The tea is good," Nina said. 5 minutes, Kim said. 5 minutes, she confirmed. She drank it slowly. He watched her drink it with the particular attention of a man who has decided, finally and completely, that this is the thing that matters. Not the empire, not the enemies, not the years of careful construction. This kitchen, this woman, this fragile new beginning that he had almost destroyed and was now being allowed, against all reasonable expectation, to try to be worthy of. He was not going to waste it. The question was whether he was going to be fast enough, because Seon was moving, and the clock that had started the night Nina stood in the rain outside that hospital was still running. And somewhere in the calculations of a 61-year-old man eating quietly in Flushing, Queens, Nina Michelle and the child she carried had just become the most important move on the board. This story is not over. What is coming next will test everything. The safety Kim thinks he has built, the distance Nina thinks she has maintained, the walls they are both, slowly, choosing to come down from. If you have ever been in a relationship where love was not the question, but timing, trust, and transformation were, then you already know this feeling in your chest right now. This channel exists for people who understand that kind of love. The complicated, costly, real kind. If that is you, subscribe. Not to a number. To a community of people who know what it means to love someone who had to lose you before they could find you. Leave a comment. Tell us what you would have done. Would you have opened the door? Would you have moved? Would you have let him make the tea? We are listening. Every single word you leave matters here.